This is some overall code explanation demo. My name is Jungin. Me and Minseok mostly contributed to work on internal code, while Paige and Alex focus on display. So our first step was to generate random number between 1 to 128. Among a lot of methods, we used LFSR, that's value entering in and next state computed by linear function. In our case, our first and second digits of our input will combine with XOR and XNOR and will be assigned to feedback, which is a wire. And lastly, the output, the first digit of the output and feedback will be assigned to output. So here's a basic rule of this game. Each player roll a dice in turn, and whoever exceeds the number that we just generated will win the game. If the player has a dice with 1, he's gonna lose all the points and switch the turn to the next one. To avoid this, the player has to press hold button, and then it will store the current score to the total score. Now the module takes 7 inputs: reset, clock, new game, roll button to roll a dice, and hold button, as well as the result of the LFSR. Firstly, we divided the clock signal to 100 in order to make LED lights blink while we roll a dice. Here's a basic operation of our dice. The registered dice roll work as a counter. It counts dice number from 1 to 6. Whenever it reaches 7, since we don't have 7 on dice, the dice roll will represent 1. The win blink indicates that the game is over. Whenever one of the player reaches the random number, the LED light will be blink, and the whole push button will go low. New game is end phase of our game. With output P1 and P2, we determine which player wins, switch to the next turn, and new push will go high. This will reset the game as well as all the variables.
Hello, this is Minseok. I will start explaining the code with the function of the roll button. When the roll button is turned on, the dice starts to roll and the dice rolling motion is displayed in the 7-segment display. Here, when the roll button is up, the variable roll push becomes 1, and when the roll push becomes 1, the dice roll gets to added 1. So when the dice roll is not 0, the dice starts to roll. When the roll button gets turned off, the dice rolling stops and the value gets added to the total score. Here, the sum here is the total score, not player 1 or player 2's scoreboard. And this process repeats when the dice value is not 0 or the player decides to stop and push hold button. If the player gets too greedy and doesn't stop rolling the dice, he or she might encounter dice value as 1. And if it happens, he or she loses all the points for his or her turn. Here you can see this is the code for the hold button. This button is used for ending a turn. When a player's turn on and off, the hold button, the total score is added to the scoreboard and turn the turn to the opposing player. Roll and hold buttons function as same for both player 1 and player 2. Here you can see when the hold button is turned on and off, player 1 gets player 1 score plus total score added to his or her scoreboard. These are the codes for preparing the points and scores data to display in the 7-segment display. In order to display them into the 7-segment display, we have to divide them to 2 segments. Let's say we have a point of 32. Then we divide it by 10 and store that value to a register, which is 3. Also, we calculate the remainder when divided by 10, which is 2, also gets stored to a register. And 3 and 2 is displayed separately into 7-segment display using BCD to 7-segment display module. Here you can see RMD1 is divided by 10 and RMD2 is the player 1 score divided by 10 also, and the remainder gets stored in the RMD2.
Hi Rashmi, so I'm just going to show you a bit of my code, which was mostly handling the 7-segment and handling basically just the output, making sure it could handle like a player 1 and player 2, this for the basically input for player input, and you can see player inputs right here, you can see right there. Guess one was wrong. Reset it again. There's a hold and a reset. Yeah, and then Alex will go over the VGA, and I'll show you a couple other things we tried to do with the 7-segment, because we did put about 40 or so hours of work into this. I know it's not beautiful, but we did try our best. Okay, so I'm going to try and guess the right number. Reset that just one more time because I'm paranoid. Let's try 4. Okay, so this LED will light if you've won, basically. So let's switch over to player 2 there, which means that 4 has been stored into player 1's score, basically. So let's try player 2 with 1. Okay, no, that wasn't right either. So no 1 will have been stored in player 2. And it will, again, start like counting up from whatever you have there. So let's try 3. All right, okay, so I guess the right number will have been, whatever I inputted for player 1's first number plus 3 was the correct number. Okay, I just reset it. Let's try again. Okay, let's try 5. Okay, no. 7 maybe? Oh, yep, there you go. Okay. So I guess the correct number that time was 7. Alright, so that's basically the guess the number game. Short, sweet, simple. And I'll hand you over to Alex to show you the VGA. I'm going to show you just a little bit of the other code we managed to push here, which, I mean, not everything sort of got put together. Like, we did manage to create a dice roller where you'd hit this and it would start counting out to 6, and I'll show you that in a minute as well on the next little segment of video here. But this was the functionality for being able to manually switch between players. Alright, so I'm quickly going to show you just a little bit of code we managed to write where something would basically tell you if something was too low or not, and you know, if you'd won, it would blink a bunch. I'll show you just one more snippet just so you know. how many different versions of this there were, so I'm actually gonna reprogram it real quick, because I made it so that you have a sort of start game button, so it basically gives you a player. And then again with the user input. Alright, so I'm just going to show some of Alex's work really quick. So we've got our roller here, reset and all that. Okay, so I'm just going to make this, let's make it 6. Okay, so yeah. It's just showing a really basic output to VGA.